Hi, everyone.
Hello,
I'm Lengwe,
I'm Ajoa.
and welcome to The Word on the Street. We really try to do that like in a more synchronized manner. I think
Yeah, I forgot the.
no. Yeah, but either way, welcome to The Word on the Street. We are excited to have you guys join us today, and we're going to be looking at the topic of
Community.
community. What is community?
How do you find community?
Where do you find community?
Is it even important to find community?
And what does community mean for a Christian? So without getting, too whatever, like talking too much, let's just get straight into it. So Ajoa, what is your definition of community?
I would say a place or a thing, a group of people that I'd call my community is where I belong, where I feel I belong.
Okay.
So if it's a place where when I am in that place, I feel at home.
Okay.
I don't feel the need to put my guard up too much. So yeah, a place where I feel I belong, in short.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting because I don't know if in my understanding of community I would use the word belong because I feel like you can be in a community and not feel like you belong. I think a community is like a group of people that share a common like characteristic, like something that connects them. And you might find yourself, like, for example, I might find myself in a community because I'm Zambian. So I might find myself in a Zambian community, but I might not necessarily feel like I belong in that community. But by virtue of the fact that I'm Zambian, I'm part of that community.
So what would you call your community though? What kind of thing would you feel like this is I find community here? What would make you say that?
So I think what I'm trying to say is community can look like different things. And I think we can find community in different spaces, but it's not necessarily that every community will make you feel like you belong or that you can be your most authentic self. But that doesn't mean that it's not a community in itself. Yeah, I think, that's what I mean.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I guess the reason why I feel that way about the definition for community personally is because, for example, if I'm with a group of people and even if we have a common goal or we have some level of something in common, but I feel like I don't know what's going on here,
Yeah.
or I just, even though we technically on paper have something in common, but I just don't, something doesn't feel right. I feel like I'd rather be somewhere else than be with these people. Pretty much I feel lonely even though I'm in a group of people. I wouldn't call that my community. It may be a community.
Okay.
Because technically we have a common something. We are in the same place.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call that I wouldn't say that I find community in that.
So I think that the way you phrase it is right, and I think there are different layers to the topic of community, and I think there is a standard, like a worldly standard of what community is, to say, okay, you guys share the same. You share the same characteristic in terms of maybe job description, so you are a community.
Right.
But then I think that's different from feeling emotionally connected or feeling like this is my community. It's different from saying I'm in a community and this is my community. So I can agree with you on that. And like looking at the topic of community, I know like you're originally from which country?
Ghana.
From Ghana. And we're in Scotland. When did you get to Scotland?
About 5 years ago now. 5 years now, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so 5 years ago, how did you find? Okay, was it easy for you to find? And we're talking about my community, right? From what we've described, not just a community, but was it easy for you to find a community where you felt like you belonged? And if so, how did you find that community?
So I think first of all, people make community. So we may have organizations or whatever, but it's the people in it that make community. So when I came, thankfully, well, I came on a scholarship, so we had the whole scholar program.
Okay.
I did find some community there.
Okay.
I think because we all came with that common ground of African students who are supported by the same group.
You were all African students?
Yeah, we were. For me, that made it very easy for me to get along with them, because I came to understand when I came here that people that were born here or people that have just lived here for long, I struggled to understand them.
Okay.
At least it took me some time.
What way? Like
I don't even know how to explain it. It's just that, of course, I'd be able to say hi, I'd be able to have conversations, but like connecting and feeling like, oh, I know this person, I wouldn't mind having a conversation with this person. It took me some time to understand people. Okay. I think it's because I think people just have different experiences. I guess that's something that naturally you experience when you go to a new place. I don't know. I guess there are people who just find it very easy to fit in. I struggled a little bit. There were very few people that I met and I feel like, oh, I find it very easy to get along with this person. But for most people, I felt like I need some time. Okay. But it wasn't too difficult to find community. So as I was saying, first from my scholarship, and also there was a group of Christians that interestingly are from a completely different denomination.
Okay.
But I found a huge community in that group.
Wait, before you go any further, I just want to stop you there. So you were coming from an Adventist background?
An Adventist background, yes.
Did you intentionally look for this Christian community?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
So I found
Did you have intentions of looking for a Christian community?
I did. I mean, for me, when I was coming, I think I've said this before in one of our meetings, I had fantasies of I had fantasies of like
dreams,
of coming to meet a lot of Adventist students, because back in Ghana we have these huge Adventist groups in the universities. So I was like, I'm gonna come, I'm gonna be active.
I don't know what you guys call
exactly.
it. The SDA, Seventh-day Adventist. I don't even know what it stands for, but we call it SDASM.
In Ghana, we call it Ghana National Association of Adventist Students. It's all of Ghanaian universities, and so it's huge. Okay. So I was excited, like I'm gonna meet all these
Adventists.
Yeah, but then when I came, I realized the community here, the Adventist community here, anyways, isn't as huge. Yeah. But the reason I found this group, even though they aren't Adventists, is because of the kind of people that they were outside of the denomination or Christian side of things. So it wasn't too difficult for me to find a community, because I happened to have met people who had some kind of common ground with me and were also just generally easy to get along with. Okay. And in church, when I went to church, like, even though, like, in terms of...
Did you look for a church?
I did. You know, my church story is interesting.
Okay.
Because when I first came, I didn't go to the Adventist church for, I think, about a month.
Okay. Why was that?
Because I was like, there are so many churches in the city, because that's normal. But then I came and I looked for the Adventist church.
Wait, there were so many...
No, that's what I assumed.
You assumed there were a lot of Adventist churches?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I searched for the Adventist church, and I found one around Bristol Square. Okay. So on the Sabbath, I dressed up, I went to the church, and it was locked. And I was like, okay, maybe the church doesn't open yet. Maybe here they start church late. Yeah. So I hung around for a bit. The church didn't get open. So I was very disappointed. I went home, and then I Googled again, and then I found the church again, but it was like more than an hour away. Okay. And back home, I live 2 minutes away from my church. Yeah. So I was like, an hour is a whole trip. So I started going with these other guys that I was talking about, because I was like, my church is too far.
To another church?
Yeah.
What church was that?
It was First Love Church. I don't know if you've ever heard anything about
Is it like a multi-denominational kind of...
Well, I don't know if they necessarily call them... It's a charismatic church.
Okay, because I know there's some churches that are referred to non-denominational, where it's like everyone from any denomination attends.
I want to say that, but honestly, I don't know the technicalities of how they word themselves. Okay. But yeah, so I was with them for a month, and I was like, I think after some time, I felt like I want to be home. You get what I mean? Because, the service is different. Yeah. And I still feel like I was worshiping God, but I think because of just how I have grown up seeing service as it is, I felt like I need to be home, and that's how I ended up forcing myself to go to church. And right from the first day, people were so warm that I definitely went back, and like I found my community again in the church. Okay. So it wasn't too hard, but it was an interesting journey. What about you?
Okay, so before I mention my journey, I mean, I'm just thinking of what you said. So you found community amongst your fellow scholars, like the fellow scholarship students. You found community amongst fellow Christians, and then eventually you found community within the Adventist Church. So my experience, like coming to Scotland, I like you said, I had fantasies. I believed I was going to find this big group of like Adventist youth. But I also wanted to really get to know different people from different backgrounds because I was coming to, the University of Edinburgh, and I knew there was going to be like an international kind of, feel, like people from everywhere. And I was really open to that. I think I found community first and foremost within the church, like within the Adventist church. Granted, I was surprised by how small the community was. And I think it took a lot of adjusting for me to just like get used to that space to know like, oh, okay, so we can actually count the number of youth like on one hand or like on two hands. And it's very like, I mean, church in itself, I think is family oriented, but I just said, oh, there's these different families, and then there are students coming in just for school and stuff like that. And I found community, in the church. I found community in the church. I found community amongst the students that had come in for the first time, myself included. Like I remember the first Sabbath I got to church, and someone just announced like, oh, we have some new students, like who are the new students? And before long I just saw all of us like kind of like herding together, like, oh, hi, my name is what, and we quickly just formed like a WhatsApp group and decided that whenever there was any activity we wanted to go to, whether it was watch a movie, we would do that together. And we kind of just became friends that way. I also found community amongst my flatmates, but in a very different way.
Right.
I felt like I belonged in the sense that, okay, we're all new. We're all starting at the University of Edinburgh or whatever. But I, to be honest, throughout the course of the year, those connections started to kind of like die out because there was nothing more that we really had in common. So where it comes to like issues of the flat or like just, basically household issues, we are still like, we're great together. Like we vibe and everything, but that's as far as it goes because we were not able to connect on other levels. And then within the university itself, I had like a very different experience from what I
Expected.
I had fantasy even when it came to the university itself, because I thought I would have like a big cohort, and I found like I was the only student in my cohort.
Right.
Like it was me and another guy, but he was doing part-time, so I literally was the only student. So I didn't have classmates. But I was connecting with other researchers, and I found connection there. And the funny thing about that is the people that I ended up getting really close to were actually Christian. Like we bonded more on the fact that we kind of had that belief rather than the actual science part of it.
Right.
So yeah, I think for me that was like how I found community here. And based off what I've just said, I think I just want to throw a question to you. Do you think there is a connection between faith and the kind of communities that you choose to associate yourself with, or the kind of communities you find, or the kind of communities that make you feel like you belong? Because you've talked about feeling like you belong. Do you feel like there's a connection between your faith and finding community?
Yeah. I think definitely my faith has impacted the kind of groups that I associate myself with, or at least the kind of groups that in my head I feel I find community in. So I did so, for example, with my scholar group. I did find community in the sense that they were genuinely nice people. They were fun to hang around with. But there were certain lifestyles that were very different from the kind of things I would do. And so I think with time, I ended up disassociating myself a little bit. Not out of a place of judgment or anything, but it's just, I didn't feel like I belonged in that sense.
Okay.
So
was that easy to do?
Honestly, it wasn't too difficult because there wasn't too much of an investment.
Okay.
Also because we would usually mainly just hang out because we are scholars. You know what I mean? And I guess like friendships bonded over time. And what's interesting is at the end of the day, I ended up becoming the people that I became very close with all happened to be religious.
Okay.
And that wasn't even intentional.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like two are Muslims, the other one is a Christian.
Yeah.
And they are all very like grounded in their faith.
Yeah.
So I ended up bonding with such people because there were certain things, even outside of faith, there were certain lifestyles that just made sense.
So what are those lifestyles? Because I find it very interesting. I'm
Girl.
sorry, I'm trying to but I would want you to unpack that because you're talking about religious people, but it's still different religions, and I'm assuming different Christian denominations, right? Because you've talked about Muslims. And you probably had friends that were Christian but were from another denomination. So, like, where was the common ground there?
So
Like lifestyle. You mentioned it.
So the lifestyle part, I think it's the obvious drinking,
Okay.
well, sometimes smoking,
Okay.
and just those things that send people find entertaining, call fun. I don't find it. It just doesn't make sense to me. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I naturally wouldn't mind attending parties if I have to.
Okay.
But if there is going to be a lot of drinking, I feel very uncomfortable. So for example, when I see other people that I know who are drunk, like my brain is not able to understand that this person that I know normally is behaving differently.
Okay.
And it freaks me out.
Okay.
So I find it so awkward to be around them, even though I may not be able to do it. So it makes me really uncomfortable that at the end of the day, I would never show up to any parties.
Okay.
Because, so like I respect their lifestyle, but I just can't be part of it in any way. So that's the example. So these friends that I had, they also happen to not show up to parties.
Okay. Okay.
And it didn't feel weird to reference God in conversations. So for example, if something good happened, saying, "Oh, I thank God for this," I never felt weird saying that because I knew they get it. And I think that's one thing that I realize is very important for me in a friendship. I think I want to be able to talk about God because I feel like I don't want to live my life and then come to God later. I feel like God should be ingrained in my life. So if something good happens, I want to be able to say, "Oh, God did this," or "I don't understand," because I just want to be able to comfortably reference God.
So your space or your community or what you consider to be your community should be able to allow you to express how you depend on God.
But the thing is, that is if we are talking about general friendships.
Okay.
So the other thing is, I also would feel like I belong. So one thing is I struggled a little bit to find friends in uni, my classmates. I'm pretty sure I will go to companies and meet classmates that I never knew were my classmates.
Okay.
Because I think I just had a big time struggling just understanding people. Like sometimes they'd make jokes or sometimes they'd have conversations that just, for me, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like I understand what they're saying theoretically, but I don't get why it's funny or I just don't see the point of the conversation. Like, so it was just really hard for me to have classmates that I get along with and I make friends with. Also partially because a lot of the scholars were also in my class.
Okay.
So I think I was one of those people that just stuck with my friends, you know what I mean? Yeah. And didn't go into the world and make new friends.
Yeah.
Because there were about 5 of us.
Okay.
So I was fine. So I think if it was the case where it was just me, I would definitely make friends. But here I have 5 other people who are also scholars, who are also doing software engineering. So I'm like, I'm good. So I had a hard time forcing myself to make new friends. But if we were working on a project, for example, even though I wouldn't talk about faith, I know that we have this common goal and we all know what we are doing. So I'd still find some sense of community because these people are generally genuinely nice anyways. So because of that commonality and we are all on that same level, I'll still find that. But if you're talking about general relationships or general friendships, I'll definitely want an element of God in it, if you get my point.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think an aspect that I'm picking out from what you're saying that's very important is sometimes I think Christians can tend to be like really judgmental and then just kind of like seclude themselves and not try be part of a community that isn't necessarily like a Christian community. You know, take for example like the scholars that you're talking about. But then again, and I know this it would probably just be going off topic, but I think the whole point or why Christ wants us to like come together is also to witness. And you're not going to get an opportunity to witness if you stick to that Christian space.
I do see your point.
Because it's like, okay, but then who's going to...
I do see your point. But you know, the thing for me was, I think there was a lot that I was already adjusting to.
Okay.
I think I had just turned 18. I had left home.
Yeah.
I had so much. And so, for example, my program of study, I hadn't done so much of it back home. So a lot of my classmates already knew so many languages. They already had projects and everything. I was still, first of all, I was kind of new to my program. I was new to this country. I was new to a lot of things. So I felt like I had a lot I was already adjusting to.
But I think like I was actually supporting what you were saying.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I was not trying to like,
Right.
I was supporting because you were saying that even in group projects, you still find a common ground, which is what I was saying is important.
Right.
Like you can't seclude yourself completely to say, I'm only going to stick with a Christian community, because the truth of the matter is you're exposed to different types of community. And you need to find a space in which you can exist within that community without losing yourself. So I was actually like saying, I'm picking. That's something that I picked from you.
Right.
Yeah.
So how about you? Was your fate, did your fate impact what kind of communities you...
Like, yeah, I mean, I think it did unconsciously. Just in terms of like, I'm thinking of like the people that I connected with so closely in terms of the academic side of things. I think I found myself with people that are believers, and it wasn't intentional, but it just sort of happened that I felt more comfortable and more myself because of the points that you brought up to say, like, I could reference God, for example. And I remember when I first came to the to the UK, I was actually just surprised by how God isn't really like something a lot of people talk about here. And that kind of like surprised me because I had like my undergrad was in Russia, and like I don't know, I just thought it would be... I felt more comfortable expressing my ideologies or whatever, my thoughts regarding God in Russia than I do here.
That's interesting.
And that actually took me by surprise. And I remember the first week I got here, I was actually like really worried that I wouldn't find people that I could connect with on that level. Like I knew that there was the church, but I just meant like even outside of the church and in those spaces. And for the longest time, I was actually even scared of like, okay, saying the wrong thing or like even posting the wrong, like I don't want to like post too much Jesus things and like people are like, oh, this crazy girl or whatever. So I was actually really scared about that. And I remember after one lecture, this is someone that I connected with and that we became really good friends. And actually the grounding of that was our belief in Christ, like our faith in Christ. And so she like ran after me after a lecture, and she was like, Lingwe, hi. I'm like, oh, hi. And she's like, you remember me from the last? I'm like, yeah, I do. And she's like, I just wanted to ask, like, are you, what did she ask me? She was like, are you religious? And I was like, why are you asking me that? You know, like I was very offensive. I'm like, why are you asking me that? And then she's like, I'm only asking because I am. And like your posts on Instagram inspire me. And like, I just thought we could connect. And I felt like really bad for the way I had like actually just approached it at the beginning. But then that in itself taught me a lesson, because I realized, hey, my faith is not anything to actually be embarrassed about. And it's something that I should wear proudly. That doesn't mean that you're like forcing it down people's throats, but it's part of who I am. And I think a community or a space or close friends, like you were saying, that can accept that and appreciate that is a space that I want to find myself in. And so this is someone that I became really close with. And, she's not Adventist. She's from another denomination, but we can meet up once in a while for coffee, talk about the lab, talk about the what, and we can still talk about all those things in the context of faith, which makes it like very easy for me. So yeah, I think I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think faith, I think it plays a role unintentionally, but it plays a role.
I think we both seem to want to see some kind of common ground in the groups that we call communities.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to find community in a group that you feel you have nothing in common with? Like, do you think it's possible to just find community in a group of randoms? Well, not randoms, but you know what I mean.
You have to give me an
like
example.
is it possible to, so I don't know, for example, you go to an event and you have to make new conversations and join new groups or whatever, and there isn't necessarily anything you have in common. You get what I mean? Like you're not necessarily scientists together or Adventists. They are just a bunch of new people that you have met. Do you think it's possible to just find community in them just because they are human? Do you get what I mean?
Well, I mean,
Because I'm thinking, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking that I think I've definitely met people that are just random.
okay.
And I've just felt like I could get along with this person.
But how long does it last?
That's the
That's
thing.
the thing.
That's
Yeah,
the thing.
I'm
Does a
thinking
community necessarily have to last though? I guess that's what I was thinking about just now. Like, is it a community? So for example, I feel like I belong to this group. I mean, does it necessarily have to be the case that goes on for so long? I feel like I just keep confusing you, don't I?
No. I mean, I'm following, but I'm thinking, because now it seems like we're talking about community having like an expiry date.
I guess that's the question I'm asking. Do you think that's possible?
Let me throw your question right back at you. Do you think that's possible? Because for you to ask that, it means you have a thought brewing.
I think, first of all, I was thinking about it and now I don't know. I feel like it could be possible to find community in people that you may not necessarily have anything in common with other than the fact that they are just another human being and, well, they are just other human beings and you are. Because, for example, you can meet a group of people who are just nice and polite and you feel like, oh, I can get along with these people. And they may not necessarily serve any other purpose in your life other than just be other people that you talk to, but they may still make you feel some kind of comfort. You get what I mean? But such friendships, well, I guess such groups may not necessarily last because I guess as time goes on, there has to be something to bond over, I guess. But it's still possible, at least even if it's temporary. And I think even communities where we have a common ground can have an expiry date if I no longer find that sense of commonality.
So what you've said has actually provoked a question in my head because we've talked about what community is. You've talked about your experience of finding community here in the UK. I've talked about mine. But then my question is, what's the purpose of community? Because if you're going to connect with people, randomly connect, and it's not going to last, I don't know. I'm just thinking, what do you think the purpose of community is? Why is community important? Is it necessary? Okay, is it necessary? Can we agree that yes, it is necessary? Why is it important? Because I think if we understand why it's important, then we would be intentional with the communities that we form.
Right.
And I don't think it would be a thing of, oh, hey, we have a good time. Yeah, let's get together. And then it lasts like for, I don't know how long it would last because I'm just trying to think like if I met random people on the street and we had good vibes and good energy, I don't know if I would consider that a community. And I don't know how long, if I did consider it a community, I don't know how long it would last because maybe why I think community is important might be different from what you think or why you think community is important. So like my question is, why is community important?
I'm thinking that I think for me, a community is important because so that I don't feel alone. Because if I feel like I belong, it means I feel like I am part of something. Like I'm not here alone. I'm not on my own. So I feel like for example, I met a family. I don't know them from anywhere. They're not Christian. They do all kinds of different things, but they have become friends of mine. I feel like I could still find some kind of community in them, even though we don't necessarily have anything in common other than they are a family I happen to meet and they are nice to me. And so because of that, they are now a part of my community somehow. And I don't feel alone because of them. You get what I mean?
I get what you mean. I think for me it's a bit different because I'll agree with you. I think community is important because I won't feel alone. But I think community should also be edifying. Like
Okay.
I think for me,
That's a good point.
like if I consider this is my community, it's because there's something that they're adding, and there's something that I hope I'm adding to them as well. You know, I'm actually a firm believer in the fact that whatever we do somehow can be beneficial for the next person, and then what they like, we don't sometimes see it. You know, even when we consider like nature and like the trees gain whatever photosynthesis, this they somehow like in some way we're all like connected. And I feel like if I'm going to consider that this is my community, it's because there's edification that I believe is going on for me within that community. Like, take for example, we're friends, and I'm thinking this is my friend. Like, I enjoy your company. I don't feel alone. I have a good time. But I also feel like you add value to me. Like when I leave, I'm like, oh, I love Ajoa's cheerful spirit. Like it just makes me feel good. It makes me feel like everything will be all right. And I feel like if I'm not feeling edified, I might not necessarily feel like this is like, you know, that definition or that distinction we had put at the beginning, say my community, not just the community, but my community.
Right.
I don't know if I would feel like this is my community.
Right. I guess that's fair enough. And like deviating a little away from that, you know, I think I've heard a lot of people, especially students, say they struggle to find community. Do you think, how do you think we as Adventist youth, well, you as an Adventist youth, because I believe that people make community. Like, do you think there's a way that we should do things so that we can also make people feel at home? So, for example, I seem to have a record of sticking to my people. I guess for me, I have to learn to bond with people, even if there's a bit of a struggle at the beginning. I guess I have to learn to make friends with new people.
I think I can. Yeah.
But do you think there's a way where, especially we as Christians, where faith plays such a big role in our lives, there's a way we can, I don't know, there's a way we can live our lives, or there's something we can do so that we can help other people also find some kind of community in us. You get what I mean?
I think we should be I think we need to be more open. That's what I think. I think as Christians, or as Adventists, however you want to take it, I think we just need to be more intentional and more open, because we've gone through the struggles. You know, we know what those struggles are. I know what my struggles were coming into the UK. I know what my struggles were going into Russia. Like, you know, it was a different thing again. And in Russia, I know it, like, here I found community. In Russia, we kind of had to create community, because we got in there and we didn't really find like an established Adventist. Like, we had Adventist youth, but they were not like always actively going to church.
Right.
And so we had to create, and we had to be very, very intentional about it. Like, we literally had to sit down and say, okay, guys, we're going to be meeting. Like, we're going to be meeting on Wednesdays. We're going to meet on Fridays so that we can keep each other entertained during the weekend and not be sucked into the drinking that was going on in the hostels and whatever. We had to pray for a space where we could actually meet as Adventist youth. And we were given that space, and we had to create like literal worship timetables. Like, we had to be intentional about it. And when we were intentional about it, and there were new Adventist students coming in, I'm speaking in the case of Adventists because that's the Christian denomination that I know. And when we had Adventist youth coming in, they now were able to find a space that they could join. So if we were not intentional with creating that space, then they wouldn't have had that space. Another example I can give is during that time, like in Russia, we also said, okay, you know what? Because a lot of the international students wouldn't go home during like New Year's or like Christmas because it was too expensive, because you'd like get there in September, so you wouldn't go home. You would only go home like during the summer. So we created camps like during this New Year's that we could kind of like have together, and then a camp just before the exams because nobody would be around during summer. And the first camp we created, like, it was so chaotic, like it was hectic because we had to like come up with a committee and we had to say, okay, and this was for international Adventist students all over Russia. So you're trying to connect with people in Petrozavodsk, in Nizhny, in Moscow, and you're trying to like bring people together. And the first time it was really hectic, but we managed to bring, and now you are like, oh my gosh, there's a country mate of mine in wherever city that's also Adventist, and you found overall going through the same struggles. And we created kind of like this family, this community for ourselves. And we started having like those camps regularly, like every year. We would have 2 every year. But we had to be intentional with creating community. So I think one thing is to be intentional with creating a community. Like, you have to be able to create that space. And only when you create that space, can you be able to invite other people into that space. And you have to be open to invite other people into that space. And it shouldn't be a space of judgment. It should just be a space of, hey, we have this in common. Come, let's hang.
Right.
Like, let's have a good time. So I don't know. I think for me, intentionality is one thing. Being open is another thing.
You know, I feel like you've answered the question in all the right ways, because like I agree with everything you were saying, and it's making me wonder, right? Do you think the Adventist youth in Scotland, as small as we are, do you think people outside of the Adventist church find community? This is your personal opinion anyways.
Yeah.
Do you think they would find community within the Adventist youth? I don't know. We are not necessarily a society, but do you think they would find community with us? I wonder. Like, the reason I'm asking is like,
Just like, right on camera.
I guess like the reason I'm asking is, I guess that's part of the point of this conversation, because we want to help people find community.
Yeah.
And we are not just trying to reach out to Adventist youth.
Yeah.
Like well, personally, I guess I can start by stating my opinion.
Yeah.
I think I think we have both expressed how surprised we were when we realized the group here is small, but I feel like I like that.
Okay.
I've come to realize I like that. I think I like how intimate it is.
Okay.
Because, for example, it's very easy for Glasgow youth and Edinburgh youth to organize things or just to hang out. And I really like that. I think initially I was disappointed, but now I realize I really like that because it's very easy to know everyone. So even from within, personally, I feel like it's not as difficult for Adventist youth to find community. And in terms of other people coming in, I think it shouldn't be too difficult, because I realize that a lot of our hangouts aren't so religious per se. But at the same time, we also have a lot of spiritual meetings.
Yeah.
So personally, I feel like it shouldn't be too difficult, but we still have people going out from us, but I don't see a lot of people coming in either. So I don't know. Do you have any particular opinions? Is there anything that we can do as Adventist youth in Scotland that will make us more of a community for people?
Girl, you've been here for 5 years. I mean, I'm not gonna pretend to understand the intricate workings of the Adventist youth in Scotland, but I will say that for any community to work, I think there should be the basis of friendship, and I think in everything, that's something that should be like fought for. I think people should be friends. And I think when people are friends, I think things flow, you know, because you're talking about people leaving. Maybe they haven't found friendship within the community. Maybe they found there's an Adventist youth community, but they haven't felt like they found friendship. And because of that, maybe they don't feel like they can be associated with it. So I think it still just comes back to the points of being open and being intentional about it. Like being open to create those friendships. Like I mean, I've been here for like, I don't even think it's a year. I think it's a few months, but I've been able to make friendship. Like people have been open, like and like you said, yes, we were all shocked. There were not a lot of Adventist youth, But it's been a beautiful experience because of the intimacy, because it's so close knit. And I think when I'm open, I think it's easy for me to form those friendships. And that's why when I hear there's a youth event, I'm like, I want to go or I want to be part of this community because I found friendship. So speaking as someone who has come in, see what I did there? Someone who has come in, I think it's just creating friendships. I think that's what people need. People feel alone. People feel alone. And especially in like a secular world, it's easy to feel very alone. And I think you just want to know that someone cares, that someone wants to hear you out, that someone actually cares where you are, that someone actually, I don't know, thinks of you, not because they're going to gain anything specifically from you. You're going to give them food or money or whatever, but just cares. And I think if we had that attitude, people would want to be part of that community.
I guess you're right. Because, like, I guess throughout the conversation, we have been talking about finding community. And, like, I'm also thinking of how we can be a community to people. And I guess that's the answer. Just be friends with people, I guess.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we can focus so much on, like, finding, like, I want to find for me. I want to find for me. And we forget that there are people who are also looking.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to create that for other people as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've looked at what we think community is. We've looked at the importance of community. We've looked at our experiences coming in here. I'm sure the experiences would be different for other people maybe who have grown up here. Or other people who have not come in the context of school, but in the context of work. I think that would be a different experience as well. And I think we've also looked at creating community and what we can do to help create that community. I don't know if you have any other questions.
No, I don't. I don't have any other questions popping in mind. I'm just happy because I realized that, like, I've never actually thought about trying to create an environment where I can, I can be some kind of community to someone.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, I'm happy that this conversation has drawn my attention to the fact that I should be more open.
Yeah.
Especially with my record. I should be more open to just being friends with people. Yeah.
Okay. So we are, like, winding up. Actually, we're almost coming to a close of this conversation that we've been having. So just quickly, Ajoa, give me in one word what you've picked from this conversation. I know you've talked about creating, but what's one word that describes the biggest lesson that you've gathered from this conversation?
Be open.
Open.
Yeah. Just be open.
Be open. Okay.
What about you?
So you gave us 2 words.
Open. Openness.
Okay,
openness is the word. Openness.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a page out of your book and say create. I think that's the word I'll use. Create. Yeah. So I think that brings us to the end of our conversation. We actually really, really want to hear what you guys think. So feel free to give, like, some feedback, some questions or some thoughts on community, what you think community is, what it should look like in the context of faith, why it's important. What else should they tell us?
Outside the context of faith.
Outside the context
how
of
we
faith.
can create community.
How we can create community. I think that's very important. Yeah. So, thank you for joining us for this insightful conversation. I have a lot to digest and think about. I don't know about Ajoa, but we hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know what you think. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Catch you later.
Bye.